So you hear a headline, right? A scholar, a PhD, gets sentenced to almost 2 years in prison for things he posted online. Now, on the surface, that sounds pretty straightforward, but underneath, there's a fascinating story about law, about language, and ultimately, about power. So let's dive in and deconstruct the verdict in the case of Dr. Chen Jingyuan, piece by piece.
Okay, so this is the official line. This was the court's big final statement. And it's a powerful one for sure. This is our starting point. In this explainer, we're going to peel back the layers of this ruling to understand not just what was decided, but how it was decided, and what that tells us about the systems at play.
All right, let's get the basic facts on the table, the things nobody disputes. The defendant, Dr. Chen Jingyuan, he was found guilty of a charge called picking quarrels and provoking trouble. Now, this charge is notoriously vague, which is an important detail. The sentence? 1 year and 8 months. So, those are the basics. But the reasoning behind the verdict is where things get really interesting. And this is where the whole thing takes a really strange turn. The court's main justification wasn't just, hey, he broke the law. No, they argued that his PhD, his high level of education, actually made him more guilty. Get this. Their logic was that because he's so educated, he should have known better. This one idea becomes absolutely central to the whole case. Okay, so legally speaking, for this kind of crime to stick, the prosecution has to prove 3 essential things. Think of them like 3 legs on a stool. First, there was a harmful consequence. Second, there was a criminal act. And third, the defendant had subjective intent, a guilty mind. The defense's entire strategy was to kick out each one of these legs. Let's see how they tried to do it.
So pillar number 1, harmful consequence. The prosecution's whole argument here was that Dr. Chen's posts caused severe social chaos. Now, that's a really serious claim, and in a court of law, you'd expect to see some serious evidence to back it up.
But here's the thing. The defense comes back and says, okay, so where is it? Where's the evidence of this chaos? They pointed out that the prosecution never actually showed any proof. No reports of protests, no public disorder, nothing. The severe chaos was just a claim with nothing to support it. All right, let's move on to the second pillar, the criminal act itself. The prosecution said the crime was spreading false information. Seems simple enough on the surface, right? But the case really starts to get complicated when you ask, what actually counts as false? And this is where Dr. Chen's defense gets pretty clever. They argued that you can't just call everything information. I mean, can a cartoon be factually false? Can a picture of a candle meant to show mourning be false? What about an academic article that's presenting an opinion? The defense argued these things aren't statements of fact, so the labels true or false don't even apply. And that brings us to the third and final pillar, subjective intent. The state of mind. The prosecution needed to prove that Dr. Chen knew what he was doing was wrong and harmful, but did it anyway. And this is where that argument about his PhD comes roaring back. In a brilliant move, Dr. Chen's defense took the court's own logic and completely flipped it on its head. He basically said, you're right, I am a scholar, and it's precisely because of my expertise and my training that I knew my actions were harmless. My knowledge told me this could not possibly cause social chaos. He used their weapon against them. So once you start picking apart the legal arguments, you're left with a much bigger, much deeper question. The whole case really hangs on this one phrase, false information. But what does that even mean? And this is where we shift from talking about law to talking about the philosophy of language itself. I mean, just look at how this breaks down. You've got different types of posts, right? A cartoon is art. A candlelight image is an expression of emotion. An academic analysis, well, that's an opinion. None of these things can really be called true or false in a simple factual way. Only a straight-up descriptive statement even has a chance of being factually false. So most of the evidence didn't even fit the crime it was being used to prove. The philosopher Wittgenstein had this famous idea. He said that words don't have some kind of fixed, universal meaning. A word's meaning comes from how it's used in a particular game. So when a court defines a word like disorder or false, it's not discovering some objective truth. It's exercising its power to set the rules of the game. The meaning is decided by whoever has the authority to make the rules. And if the court gets to define the words, well, that's an exercise of power. And that brings us to another philosopher, Michel Foucault. He talked about how modern power works. It's not just about the old style of power that says no, that forbids things and punishes your body. Modern power is more subtle. It's a power that says yes. It produces things. It produces what we think of as truth. It produces what we see as normal. And it works to discipline the soul. So when Foucault uses the word discipline, he doesn't just mean getting sent to detention. It's a whole system of control. It works by constantly watching, by classifying people into different categories, and by constantly judging them against a standard of what's normal. The real goal isn't just to stop a crime, it's to shape a person into someone who is obedient and easy to manage.
And if you think this is all just abstract theory, look at the actual details of Dr. Chen's case. The trial was held in secret, he was blocked from contacting his family, his writings from prison were silenced, his appeal was denied without even a public hearing. Seen through this lens, these aren't just random procedures, they're techniques of discipline designed to isolate, control, and, well, to normalize an individual.
And here's the real kicker. The ultimate target of a public verdict like this isn't just the one person being punished. It's everyone else watching. Foucault called this the panopticon effect. It's like being in a prison where you know you could be watched at any moment, even if you don't know for sure. What happens? You start policing your own behavior. You become your own prison guard. So let's just recap the journey we've been on. We started with what looked like a simple legal verdict. But then we saw how that verdict was taken apart, showing its weak spots. From there, we saw how the whole thing became a game of language, where the very meaning of words was the prize. And finally, we saw it for what it might also be, a powerful exercise in social control. And that leaves us with one final, pretty heavy question to think about. This case really forces us to ask, if the very definition of a crime, the very meaning of a word, and even the nature of truth can be decided by those in power, then what does a word like justice truly mean?